We've talked a great deal over the first few weeks about development of the self, uh, the gaps between our ideal selves and how that becomes socialized, how we develop certain attitudes about various issues and topics. But fundamentally, human beings are social creatures. And as such, interpersonal relationships and how they're formed and sustained is one of the most fascinating topics in the social sciences, and it's the focus of this chapter. Human beings are, and I want to warn you in advance, much of this, again, is like just kind of um, information that's going to give us a framework for the general topics. So obviously, you're not going to get tested on the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, or will you? I'm just kidding. But just to give you some context of the wider discussion about things that you will be tested on. So some of these things I'll skim through, and you don't have to feel the need to try and copy down per se. But you all are aware of this, particularly at your age bracket, that human beings are obsessed about friendships, hookups, romantic relationships, dating, love, sex, reproduction, sexual orientation, marriage, and divorce. These are the most common topics in plays, movies, songs, TV shows. And there are many shows such as The Bachelor. My first personal favorite show, Wife Swap. I'm just kidding. I don't think, does Cheater still come on?
Nah, it don't come on. But that pissed me off when I found out that show was scripted though. Like
Wait a minute. A reality show is scripted? Oh
yeah,
my God.
Wait, Cheetahs do still come on.
Oh, they still come on?
Yeah, you gotta have like, it's not on like regular TV, but
For sure. So yeah, so people are, again, like, it's a reason why shows like that have such popularity and sustainability, scripted or not. Because people are very curious about, again, what drives and motivates human relationships and what can we learn from them. So we talked about attraction. There are three fundamental questions that speak to that are related to, and keep in mind, right, we're not only talking about physical sexual attraction. It's very important. We're going to talk about that in this chapter, but that's not the only focus when we're talking about building relationships. So why are we attracted to some people and indifferent or repelled by others? Again, this may be romantically, but also in terms of like just friendships. Why do you click and rock with some people and other types, you just may not, historically vibe with that well? What determines how our emotional relationships evolve over time? And what does it mean to love someone? And what problems are likely to arise along the way? The need to belong is a basic human motive. Again, there's so many things that we talk about here that are learned, where many of your attitudes about, abortion, homosexuality, illegal drug use, education, marriage, family structure, sports teams, athletic prowess itself can be learned. Many of those things, again, that inform who we are learned. But the need to belong is something that's instinctual. And whether we admit it or not, we care deeply about what others think of us. Now, hopefully you're not concerned with what other people, what everybody in the world thinks of you. But yes, I care very much if I'm making my parents proud. I care very much if my students feel like, I'm competent and helpful to them. I care very much if my girl thinks that, I'm considerate or thoughtful. Your average white bigot, I don't care as much about what they think per se. And most people that I don't know or have relationships with. But again, if you have personal relationships, like, I hope that, that Maisha, that yeah, you do care about what your boyfriend think. Now you're not finna live your whole life on that, I hope. Let me get my hair done this way. Let me do this. Let me choose this major. Let me live here because of what he thinks. But a normal part of healthy adult relationships is to keep it, to consider these type of things. And when we talked about the development of the self, a lot of times people don't develop it in a mature and quote unquote normalized fashion that allows them sincerely to appreciate these things. There are many people who are so self-absorbed that it is really, difficult for them to form normal, healthy relationships. This is why, again, like, one of the aspects of therapy and things like that, and getting you to understand and unpack yourself, Michael, is so that you can do those kind of things. Because after a certain point, right, if you, again, this needs to belong is intrinsic. And if you have challenges in many different settings, like, forming like strong friendship bonds, if you can't stay in strong romantic relationships, if Jakira, you and your mama ain't talking every couple of months, after a while, you might need to look at the common variable there, and that might be you. But those with a network of close social ties, again, this is not opinionated, Ryan Anderson. These are things that have been researched. When we talk about happier, healthier, like one of the things, again, I want you all to be able to speak about in your papers is how do you measure things? How do you measure things? So we feel like we can measure happiness. Like, again, we can use it. One of the things, again, in your methods, how do we use a survey to measure somebody's happiness? How do we use medical data to measure somebody's physical health? And we can correlate that with the amount of social ties and social networks that they have. And consistently, the research has shown that the more healthy networks you have, Maisha, the more that it improves your mental and physical health. Now, when I'm talking about social networks, I ain't talking about social media networks. That's very different. Again, so a lot of times, we see that across the board, and this data obviously is very old, so it's probably way higher than that 2009 total now, where people have a lot more social media friends than they used to. But much research, and Jakira McLeod talked about this in the very beginning of our class, a film you might check out, The Social Dilemma, that a lot of times it doesn't really provide the kind of fulfilling relationships that human beings really need. A lot of times it's very shallow and surface level. Now, let me be clear. It doesn't have to be that way. It ain't got to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. You can use those spaces to form some healthy relationships where if there's some quirky thing that you're really into, like, so if Maisha, you want to click with other people who are into skateboarding and psychology, then there probably is a social media network just for people like that. And y'all might be able to find a way to connect through social media. And like, you know what? Hey, we're going to meet at this skate park at 3:00 on Saturday. And you can form bonds and connections through things like that. In countries where they don't allow a lot of democratic participation, people have used Facebook to communicate things where, like, the police is saying, hey, people can't gather in the streets. If you, we're not going to, we control all the media, so we're going to, not allow protests to really be showing up. So people use Facebook to communicate their protests and find ways to still maintain those movements and ultimately overthrow some governments in places like Egypt and Syria. But the need for affiliation, again, is a natural human instinct. And we do it basically right where, and keep this in mind, we take account and we take stock of what's the value and what are the rewards and benefits of different relationships. Keep this in mind going forward. It may sound very shallow. This don't mean that you're trying to use people most of the time. But there may be some relationships you may need to end, Michael, that just because somebody's been your friend for 10 years, or you've been with this girl for 5 years, that if the benefits, if the cons of their relationship begin to outweigh the pros, human beings oftentimes, respond either differently within those relationships or end them altogether. But we all need some sense of affiliation. So even when we're feeling miserable, it's really important again to expose yourself to other people. And sometimes again, where when people have negative energy per se, that it's not an accident, Ron, that a lot of times, those folks will congregate towards each other. And it's not just in terms of a gripe session per se, when people feel, particularly when people feel powerless, such like the Black Lives Matter movement, where people are seeing these things happen to Black people again and again and again. And you're watching this. I know I have watched this at times and and feel isolated, like what the fuck is going on? Am I the only one who's seeing this and think that this is crazy? So having a community being able to come together and people feel like, no, dude, you're not crazy at all. It's these cats crazy. Okay, cool. That helps me sincerely to keep my balance because I'm looking like what the hell is really going on. So again, whether it be something like the Black Lives Matter movement, the LGBT movement over the last 20, 30 years, where again, people are feeling isolated and picked upon because of their sexual identity, and people want to feel some level of connectivity. One of the things, again, Jakira, when you're in Notre Dame in the fall, I feel very confident that there's probably some Black student groups there where people because again, it's probably gonna be very few of y'all compared to the white population. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't still find connection with your classmates, because sometimes Shakira may only want to interact with other social science students. But there are going to be times where she probably wants to interact with other Black students as well. Not everybody finds this an easy path. That in survey research has found, Michael, that 49% of Americans identify themselves as being shy. Shy people find it difficult to approach strangers, make small talk. It can be more challenging for people that identify themselves as shy to call somebody and ask them out for a date, to mingle at parties. Sometimes, these shy, being shy is, genetic, where, you just may be very naturally reserved. Oftentimes, though, shyness is learned. That, again, parents oftentimes may do things, as a child, particularly if they see that you're a little bit more, again, some kids are just naturally, and you all may fall into, one of both categories where you may just been naturally really energetic and, rambunctious and going up to my age, you might have been a little kid, you 2-3 years old, you just going up there about, hey, how you doing? Hey, your parents just looking like, wow, this kid is something else. Others, you may introduce to hey, Michael, this is Mr. Such and Such, and you may kind of withdraw. Parents oftentimes will observe this, and they may do things to kind of force you out of your shell. So I'm going to make you be in this church play, Jakira, to get you into meeting other little kids and to getting used to speaking out in public. I know for myself, I think that to an extent, I always had some natural extroverted qualities, but it was definitely something that was forced upon me in terms of that. We was going the kids in our family were expected to be able to speak and articulate and deal with different types of people, and it wasn't fit to be little goo goo gaga baby talk and stuff that. Those type of things were not accepted at all. And still are not. Little kids be coming to my parents' crib now, they be getting grilled. So keep these things in mind in terms of your own children that you'll have, hopefully many days into the future. Because loneliness, again, everybody, whether you're an extrovert or introvert, everybody experiences some degree of loneliness. But having the skill set, Ron, to be able to cope with that can be very important. Again, particularly, you get into your careers and stuff, you may have to go to different cities far away from your home. Again, like myself and coming to the Carolinas, I ain't know nobody down here before I came. But I feel very confident, you could drop me anywhere and, I'll figure it out. So there are three aspects of loneliness: intimate, relational, and collective. And keep this in mind, right? Because a lot of times, Ron, people will believe that you can avoid loneliness just by having a lot of people around. That ain't true. And we'll talk about that in a moment in terms of true intimacy. That they're, again, particularly at the college level, right? There are people that you got around that you're not really intimate with. It intimate means that you really are sharing things to yourself. I ain't talking about just sexual stuff. Get your mind out the gutter, Michael. Intimacy meaning, like, you know, that there are some boys who, you know, your most vulnerable aspects of yourself, things that happened when you was a little kid, your parents' names and stuff like that, like they know all that kind of stuff. And some people that just, you know, okay, you just go to class with, you kick it with them, you might hoop with them or something like that, but y'all, you know, not really down there. And again, that's okay. Not every relationship got to be that way. But make sure you know the difference, because Maisha, you definitely need some of that intimacy component in terms of people that you can really share. And again, when we talk about the actual self, Ron, the intimacy component speaks to the closer you are to a person, the more of your actual self that you really show. Again, we interact in an academic context for a specific purpose. So most of our personalities, we're not finna show to each other. Not because we're not cool and we ain't got love. Like, that's not the purpose of us coming together. You know, and there are some things, again, where it's like, okay, look, y'all may feel comfortable sharing, other things you won't. But you definitely want to have people in your lives where you feel like you can share as much as possible. And like we talked about, the initial attraction. Now we're getting into some testable stuff here, Michael. That we're attracted to others with whom a relationship is directly or indirectly rewarding. Sometimes it can be physically rewarding, but again, not always. Where, you know, some friends, like, you know, like, look, man, this dude is just funny as hell. You know, he lighten the mood when he around. Like this cat. Some of my homies, you know, again, like, hey, that we really, like, you know, connected with sports, and like, you know, I get rewarded by being able to talk about sports in a way that's a little bit deeper with this friend than I might be able to with another friend. This friend might really be into hip hop. This one, I can really, like, I think, you know, somebody mentioned this before in this class, where you might have some boys where it's time to, like, you know, like, look, we got to go rumble with these cats. It might be another friend that might be better in terms of, like, if you need help moving. And you depend upon these people. But all humans exhibit, Maisha, patterns of attraction and mate selection that favor conception, birthing, and survival of offspring. What this speaks to is that there's something that's natural within us, particularly, like, you know, I think within all sexes, where you will be naturally attracted to, like, you know, mates is, like, you know, have, like, that give you an offspring a better chance of protection. Through most of human history, like, you know, reproduction and actually having a child come to term was not a really, the stakes were not as high, as good as they are now. Many women would be losing children in their own lives in childbirth. If you did have a child, a lot of times they weren't going to, like, you know, necessarily, like, you know, mature to term, or get into, like, you know, adolescence. You know, they may die very young. So one of the things, according to this view, that humans very often, like, you know, assume as it relates to reproductive selection, is what mates are going to, like, allow you the best reproductive success. So in that way, for example, you know, where when they talk about, you know, and I'm saying this scientifically and sincerely, when they talk about things like childbearing hips, like being, like, thicker gives you an advantage in that regard in terms of reproduction. So the notion goes that men will be attracted to that, not just because you might like big old asses, Michael, and you might, but because there's something in your genetic wiring that sees like, hey, that she may give me a better opportunity at reproduction. The way that people though have met in our time, so you want to be very mindful about this when we talk about the initial attraction, that again, before the initial attraction would be very much based upon, seeing people and interacting with them in real time. In this way, and you probably can, speak to this in terms of your own attraction to people and romantic attraction in this regard, that yes, you might think that this dude is cute, Maisha, but oftentimes a lot of it, like I know for me, even as much as like, I like physical attractiveness, the thing that oftentimes makes a person attractive is like their full personality and being. And I can't necessarily see how attractive you are just by you sending me a picture on, Instagram or something. Like I got to be around you. And in that way, a lot of those things are limited today. Or people will develop relationships that are not necessarily rooted in that. Whether or not that's good or bad, I'll let you all decide. Because again, it's not like relationships were just perfect and stuff before social media. People got divorced. People had breakdowns in trust. Friends fell out. But I do want you, I think you would not be doing yourself full justice if you didn't consider these things and how this may affect our relationships as a species going forward. Maisha, 1 second, don't lose your point. When we talk about attraction, the most important things are proximity and mere exposure. Proximity just means how close you are to a person, like physically close, and then mere exposure. What this speaks to, Ron, is that if freshman year, I was going to say if a girl lived on your dorm, but y'all dorms are segregated by sex, so y'all didn't have this situation. But the girl that stays, like, if hypothetically speaking, you're more likely to stay to become attracted to initially a girl that stays in your dorm as opposed to a girl that don't. Mere exposure speaks to that. Jakira, this dude that you might not have really noticed the first day, but after seeing him class after class after class after class, you're like, you know what? It might be something. But by seeing him again and again and again, as opposed to you may have missed, like, you're Mr. Right, but you wasn't exposed to this dude enough. Maisha Haynesworth.
I was just gonna say to your last point you made, like how we don't, base people anymore about, their personality. Is more like physical attractiveness. But if you look like at online dating sites now, it's more about the physical than the personality, because like it's this whole app like Tinder. You just swipe right and swipe left if you think the person looks nice, and then I guess you try to figure it out after that. But after that, it's pretty much looks.
Absolutely. And again, what like the pros and cons to that, like if that is what you're looking for, where there have always been people that have that like most people probably ain't like me. Like, I know all types of dudes who like, look, I don't care about all that other stuff you talking about, Muhammad. Like, man, let me see what she looking like, and that's pretty much what I'm on. Like, I know many of cats who like have said that. So if that's what you're looking for, it allows you to save some time. Like, so I'm not saying that my way is better per se. I just know what works for me, and yeah, I got to be able to have a conversation with you after a while, Maisha, and I need your ass to have something to say, dog. But the single best predictor, again, is physical proximity or nearness. So and again, we ain't talking about just romantic, but even the friends we meet. That a lot of times the people that you meet, that you become cool with, might be the person like, hey, this dude, his dorm room was across the hallway. We kept like linking up. We played video games. That's how we got, like, as a result of that, like, you still, again, have to find some other connection with this person. But there are many people that you may have had really good connections with, Ron, that just didn't live close enough. Like for example, I know one of the things that's crazy. There are friends that I met like in college, Michael. They like live right like around the corner from me, and we knew all types of mutual friends in high school, but like we never met each other. And like, dang, dog, like we would have been kicking it in high school, but like we never got a chance to meet each other. Maybe there are other people like that as well, throughout our lives. Mere exposure again. The more people are exposed to a stimulus, the more positively they evaluate it. Oftentimes, the notion is that familiarity, the more that you see a person, the more you're around, and the more that it breeds contempt. The research doesn't support that. And generally, the more that you're around a person, and again, on all levels, that one of the ways we'll talk about prejudice in the second half of the class, Michael. And one of the strategies that have been used to reduce prejudice has been to expose people of different races to each other. That the more you're around white people, the more that you're around this Hispanic person, the more that your prejudice will be reduced. And there's been a lot of data that supports that. When we talk about romantic traits, how would you all rate these things before we get into like what the research says? Now, we're not talking about friendships here. We're talking about romance. What you would want, in a girlfriend, boyfriend, a life partner. Intelligence, kindness, an appetite for risk. Like, maybe you really want like, a dude that really lives dangerously or something, Aisha. Bungee jumping, skydiving type. Got a motorcycle. What are them type of cats? Maybe you like somebody, Michael, with a sense of humor. How about you all, young people? What are the traits that you think are, or are there any other traits here that may be missing? Very briefly, we're going to close out in a couple of minutes. So very briefly, what are some traits that you all will rank highly?
I could go first. Well, starting off with these four, honestly, I'll say intelligence and sense of humor is kind of at the top. Then there's kindness, because again, who wouldn't want kindness? And then a risk, appetite for risk. Now, why I rate, let's say sense of humor. I like you said, if you have a conversation with somebody, they gotta have something to say. You gotta kind of match my sense of humor. I'm not saying everything, but if I say something, slick and you don't understand it, okay. But it's like, how long is that gonna keep going on me just talking and wasting my breath, Yeah.
Good. Absolutely. Other thoughts.
I can agree with everything that Ron said. And I gotta add in, you gotta like to eat, because I like to eat. So if you one of them girls like, I just get a salad or I just eat off your plate, like, nah.
Absolutely good, very good. Those kind of things are very important, and we'll talk about that some more in a moment. Very quickly, if nobody else has any comments, anybody else want to weigh in very quickly? So we talk about this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
It has to be like the sense of humor, because I'm funny and I don't like people who just look at me.
Now, absolutely. Yes, and I know I have a very, as y'all probably see, and it's even worse in my social life, I have a very sick and twisted sense of humor. So I need you to be able to laugh and then be able to like, have some thick skin about some things too. But so one of the things we talk about right with physical attractiveness, that even though those other things like intelligence and sense of humor are important, make no mistake, physical attractiveness does matter. And it's not just in terms of things like romantic relationships. Again, research that there's a standard, and people always say, well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And that's true. But there's a standard of beauty in American society. Again, like, where, like, it's not an accident, for example, that folks like Rihanna and Beyonce are held up as like, in the public eye in the way that they are. Not that there are many types of beautiful women, but if you don't understand and aren't aware of the cultural history of this country, of what the standard of beauty is, your choices may get influenced disproportionately. So you want to be very mindful of those kind of things. Now, I would like to hope and believe that these standards of beauty are changing. And then most of the time, like the standards of beauty in America, like the standards of beauty in any country, who gets to determine that for the most part? Who determines the standards of beauty in most countries?
Upper class, no?
Absolutely.
Like
Good.
corporations, yeah.
Yeah, and the powerful people. So
Yeah.
for the most part, the standard of beauty in America has been established by rich white men. Again, that has shifted a little bit, but you want to be mindful about that. So with this in mind, the closer you fit into your culture standard of beauty, the lower your bill is. So like if you're a blonde, skinny white girl, you getting like $5 a bill, homie. And I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying. They get more, again, by conversely, if you're like, a Tom Brady looking white man, you probably gonna work out better than like, my black ass going to jail. You're gonna get more petition signed, earn more money. So again, like, people again use it strategically. Where it's like, okay, look, we want to donate to this cause. We want to have somebody donate for this cause. Like, okay, look, let's have Ron get these signatures instead of Dr. Muhammad because, Ron might be able to get more honeys to sign like his petition and like, crusty Dr. Muhammad. So let's get him out there and work very strategically. We're not trying to pimp you, Ron. We're just trying to like, use these things to our advantage. So I make light of this stuff, but, keep these things in mind for yourself. That again, if you can make your fly work for you, I highly encourage you to do so. It allows you to earn more money, Jakira. Attractive people are expected to do better in school. And we talk about it being objective or subjective, but very quickly, look at these faces. Who's the prettiest and the most handsomeness? Yell them out to me. Look at them quickly. So of the faces, which do you think is the flyest?
Well, for the females, bottom right.
Good.
Yeah, it was it 32 face. Yeah, 32 face, the female.
32 face for the male.
Good. And
Yep.
and pretty much consistently, researchers have found that people agree with you all pretty heavily. And even though again we have this beauty, and keep in mind, right, it's the same person, but the like your face structure, your hair length, like those things matter. It's a reason, Michael, that white people be out here getting Botox and stuff, dog. It's a reason that people be buying so much hair. Nothing wrong with that. But like we talked about, would change your attitude. If you want to, if you want to get Botox on, Michael, I ain't gonna be mad at you. But I hope that you'll do it because you want to do it, not because you feel like you're not meeting up to some standard of beauty. And again, there's high levels of agreement for facial rating across ages and cultures. That again, even though we like, hey, I just like what I like, that many people, again, that, like I say, for whatever you may think of her, personally, Michael, I always thought that Kelly Rowland was the flyest. But I don't know too many people that's going to say like that Beyonce is ugly. Like, okay, you may rank this person higher or lower, but, I don't know anybody like, okay, no, that chick is ugly. Yeah. Same thing again, like with what it felt like, probably like a classic Denzel or something like that. It probably wasn't gonna be too many females of any race, like, no, that dude, I don't see what y'all see in him. So there are certain things, again, that's a standard across almost any race and culture, even though, of course, we may have our own preferences. Even babies begin to know already, Ron, what are the quote unquote most attractive faces. It is really interesting how the mind works. I think I'll leave it there for now. What I would like for you all to do with the remaining time of class, hear me closely. Go on to e-learning. Your pop quiz is now open and available. It closes at 3:50 sharp. It closes at 3:50 sharp. Go on to e-learning. It shouldn't take you very long, but please go on to e-learning and complete your quiz. One more final thing. On your syllabus, I think it says your exam is next Tuesday. The final exam for this class is next Thursday. It'll be next Thursday. The final exam is next Thursday. I'll see you all on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Go take the quiz, not now, but right now.